Today we are talking about conflict resolution. I'm going to give you guys practical ways to approach conflict. We're going to talk about the purpose conflict should serve in your relationships, not just romantic, but also platonic relationships, familial relationships, any relationship you have, emotional intelligence applies to. And so this class and I am all about teaching you how to raise your emotional intelligence so that you have healthier relationships. I typically work with people in their romantic relationships, but like I said, it works for any type of relationship. And I really think that emotional intelligence is the key to having healthy relationships. So even if you are single, you can work on raising your emotional intelligence because it helps you to first become a better person, second, a better partner. So all of the work that I actually do, even though I work with people in their romantic relationships, all of the work that I do is personal development on an individual level because I found that the things that people consider relationship problems usually comes down to one or both partners' areas of growth, right? There's very few things that are actually a relationship problem. Relationship issues usually come from people not knowing how to coexist. So that's why all of the work that I do is in personal development, teaching you how to first be a better you, be aware of your areas of growth, being mindful of how you show up and how you impact those around you, and how to deal with those around you. And that typically helps improve your relationship. If this is your first time seeing me, welcome. I am Erin. I am an attorney turned emotional intelligence coach, and now I help people raise their emotional intelligence to improve their relationships. So what that means is I focus on communication, conflict resolution, and emotional connection. So today we are focusing on conflict resolution. If this is your first class, please make sure you go back and watch all of our other classes. We have talked about some really good things. We talked about emotional awareness, your triggers, how to manage your emotions, how to process your emotions. We had quite a few classes on conflict resolution. On communication. So we've been having quite a few classes. Like I said, this is like class number 13. You haven't been seeing me on your timeline. I also have not been posting as much. So that's probably why, once you don't post as frequently, they stop showing you. But I'm about to be back because I need to start talking about this self-aware campaign that I'm doing. So we're doing a self-aware summer over here in the membership community. If you haven't heard me talk about it, we're going to go a lot deeper into the things that we have been talking about in class. But in the membership community, I could really get in your business because I could talk back to you and, really ask a lot of questions on here. Y'all can only text but so much. So hopefully you will start to see me again on your timeline. But okay, let's get started. I can't see who is. Okay. So welcome to EQ 101. Like I said, this is week 13 out of, I don't know, I think we only have like 3 or 4 more classes left. And today we are talking about conflict resolution tips. As you can see, I don't know how to make my hair not block it. And today, we're going to talk about what conflict is, how you should approach conflict in your relationships, the purpose of conflict. I'm going to give you practical ways to approach the conflict, and I'm going to give you signs that you are approaching conflict the right way, and a formula. Okay, so the rules you guys already know. The first rule is to be honest with yourself. If you aren't honest with yourself, you will not get the benefit of this class. Another rule is no projecting. So don't project your experience on other people. You can share your experience, but don't assume that is everybody else's experience. Another thing is no generalizing. It kind of goes with the projecting. No all men this, all women that, because it's not true. Again, you can share your experience with a certain person, but do not, again, assume that is everybody's. Just generalizing. It just does not, it's not helpful. And it just perpetuates this whole gender war that's going on. It's, again, not productive. And we are all about having productive conversations over here. And this has to be a safe space. We talk about some pretty sensitive things in nature and intimate things. And the only way that we can continue to have this, the only way I will continue to show up and teach is if this is a safe space for everybody. And then lastly, I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. And so long as you are willing to do the work, I am going to show up and teach. So let's get started. Hey, Ashley over here. So we are talking about conflict resolution. So I told you we're going to talk about how to actually resolve conflict and not just express your frustration. So let's start with why conflict even matters. Conflict is something that a lot of people try to avoid. And I get it because I too am conflict averse, right? If I can avoid it, I will. But just because you don't want to handle it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't serve a purpose. And so what I need you to remember is that conflict is inevitable in any relationship, but it's how you deal with it that matters, right? And it is absolutely possible to have a relationship without all of this screaming, yelling, cussing. I don't argue. In fact, the arguing, the cussing, and the yelling is actually a sign that you lack emotional intelligence because you aren't able to self-regulate and you're trying to have conversations prematurely. I made a video before. So my parents have been married for 50 years, June to be 51 years that they have been married. And I have never heard them argue. I'm sure that they have had conflict. And I know they've had conflict. Me and my mom have had conversations as I've gotten older. But in my 30s, almost 7 years of being on this earth, I have never seen my parents argue, yell, scream, none of it. Right? And so it's definitely possible to have a relationship without any of that. Right? It just takes a level of emotional maturity, right? And all of the things that I have been teaching you in this class, right? Learning how to process your emotions before you go into communicate, making sure that you're communicating in the right way. So this class is just going to add on top of that and give you tips on how to approach the conflict. You always try to avoid conflict as much as you can. So sometimes you can avoid it, but sometimes you can't, right? If there is an issue that is going to linger, you have to address it, right? And so we are going to talk about that today. So for those moments where you cannot avoid it, right? If it is going to affect you, right? If you keep thinking about it, right? That's not healthy. Just pushing it to the side, sweeping it under the rug. At some point, you're going to trip over what's under the rug. What's your question, Trisha? Can you talk today, girl? Jeez. What's your question? So, conflict is not the enemy, right? And so avoiding it also may not be the healthiest thing. It all depends on what the conflict is and how much it is bothering you. All right. Sometimes you do have to address it. You just have to make sure that you address it in the right way, right? Because what conflict means is that it is trying to tell you that there is something in your relationship that needs attention. Right. And so it doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It just means there's something that needs your attention and you just have to make sure that you do it in a mature way. And so when you are able to address that issue, whatever that conflict is or whatever needs to be fixed in a healthy way, what it actually does, it deepens your connection with your partner. You notice that when it comes to conflict, it's not people's action towards you, it's their words. That makes sense. That makes sense. And so last week, I don't know if you were here last week, Trisha, but last week we talked about how to say things and make sure you are choosing the right words. That replay, if it's not up yet, it will be up by the end of this week. I would encourage you to go and look at that. And so I think it depends on what words impact you and what, like, it depends on why the words are impacting you. How long do you think is too long to resolve? So there is no time limit in terms of resolving conflict. It depends on the people that are addressing it. And so some of the things that I say it will go into first, you have to make sure that you are still not in that first emotional state, right? When an emotion is triggered, it takes over everything, right? And you can't be emotional and logical at the same time. So I would say how long it takes you to resolve something first, you got to wait for those emotions to pass. If you're still yelling, screaming, hollering, that's not the time to try to work through things, right? And so for some people, it may take a few minutes. Sometimes you might need a day to cool off and then have a productive conversation. So I can't say how long it will take, but if you realize how long it takes for those emotions to pass and then use the tips that I'm going to give you, I think it's 5 tips to approaching conflict, that will give you a better idea of how long it will take to come up with things. So just remember that conflict is inevitable. It's how you deal with it that's important. Sometimes you cannot avoid the conflict. Sometimes pushing it under the rug is not helpful. This is why you keep having the same arguments over and over again. We're going to talk about that in a second too. Okay, so there are 2 different types of conflict. There is intrapersonal conflict and interpersonal conflict. So intrapersonal conflict is conflict you have with yourself, your inner conflict, right? Your intrapersonal conflict is when your emotions don't align with what's going on, right? You know you really should be doing this, but you over here doing this. You know this is not good for you, but you're still doing it anyway. You're not living in your truth. You're not, right? You're conflicted inside, right? There is something you feel bad about and you a lot of times project that, right? So intrapersonal conflict is conflict you have with yourself. And my membership ladies, this is what we talked about on Tuesday. We worked through identifying some of those conflicts. So today we are going to focus on the interpersonal conflict when we have conflict with other people, right? And when we hear conflict resolution, a lot of times people are talking about the interpersonal conflict, right? Conflict with other people. But I want you to remember that a lot of conflict you have with other people comes from inside you, from your intrapersonal conflict, right? So Trish, when you say the words really affect you, you would have to figure out why certain words trigger you or why certain words hurt you more than others. But that's something that you would have to, spend time with and understand and figure out where that sore came from, right? Does it remind you of something in your past? Do you have a bad experience with those words, or were you treated like that before and you didn't like it, right? So there's something about the words that people are treating or using that are hurting you that is reminding you of something in your past that wasn't a pleasant experience, right? So thank you for the gift. So interpersonal and intrapersonal conflict. Today we're talking about interpersonal conflict. And the link, like I said, it often is, let's say, you have an intrapersonal conflict because you want to say something, but you don't because you fear rejection. The way that may show up in your interpersonal conflict is now you might become passive aggressive when really you need to learn how to speak up. How do you deal with a situation where how do you deal with a situation where by when the other party is addressing? I don't know what you mean. Can you ask that again, Liberty? How do you deal with a situation when the other person is addressing the issue? Is that what you mean? Rewrite your question. I'm gonna keep going. So, okay. Conflict that personal that of your inner conflict that personal that of your inner vulnerable difficulty expressing your boundaries or your desires. That's conflict between your values and behaviors, right? What you're doing does not align with who you know you are, who you're supposed to be. Okay, so one example. Have you guys ever seen, and I just saw this recently, there was a nice video on here on TikTok, and this girl had posted a video, like a really nice video about her dad. Everybody in the comments was like, oh, it must be nice. My dad left when I was 2 and never came back. Why would y'all come and trauma dump on this girl's post like that? It was a really nice post. And all of the people in the comments that had something negative to say, it was because of their own. And all of the people in the comments that had something negative to say, it was because of their own experience. The intra conflict they had with themselves presented a problem on this girl's post. And it's like, this was not the space for that. Like, why would you rain on this girl's parade? She was celebrating her dad, and just because that wasn't your experience, you couldn't even, right? And there was so many people. And it's unfortunate, right? And that's not to discredit people and their experience, but they didn't have to put that on that girl's post. Right? You just didn't. I'll give you another example, and I actually just saw this. Was this yesterday? One of these relationship Facebook groups I'm in. This girl she made a post and was asking people's opinion, and so long story less long. Her boyfriend, or the guy that she has been dating, he's been away for a month. Now that he's back, she wanted to spend some quality time alone. He was sick, but she wanted to go like to the flower market. He said, I don't know if I can handle going to the flower market. I guess it would like make him sicker. I guess, I don't know if it was like sinuses or whatever. Like, the flower market didn't sound like a good idea to him, but he said, how about we go to, and he named another place. She jumped to, well, you don't want to spend time with me at all. You've been going for a whole month and you don't want to spend time with me at all. I don't feel like a priority. You see how I'm hurt? Like, that hurts my feelings. And so she jumped all the way, like, that hurts my feelings. And so she jumped all the way from him saying, I don't want to go to the flower show, spend no time with me. Her intra-conflict is that either she was feeling insecure or she needed some more attention from him. How about now? Is that better? Cashmere and Ashley, am I freezing for you guys over here?
Yeah, you work for a little bit.
Okay. Am I better now? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, we didn't get too into deep there. We're talking about right now, hey Gwen, we're talking about intrapersonal conflict and intrapersonal. So intrapersonal is conflict you have with yourself, and we're talking about how it affects your conflict with other people. And so the example I was just using, this woman was talking about this guy she's been dating. He's been going for a month. She wanted to spend time with him. She wanted to go to the flower shop. He said, hey, the flower shop is not a good idea for me. How about we go here instead? And her response to that was, I can't believe you don't want to spend time with me at all. Her intrapersonal conflict was, response to that was, I can't believe you don't want to spend time with me at all. Her intrapersonal conflict was, she likely felt either insecure or like she needed some time and attention from him, but she did not communicate that effectively, that she wanted it to be an intimate moment with just them two. He said, not flower shop, let's try it. Her all the way to you spend time. That just caused a big problem that wasn't even there. Right? So a lot of times the point is our own inner conflict affects Right, because what did you hear me say? And then so later on, and then so like she posted like their text messages, and she said something like, well, why didn't you just offer to come to my house? And he was like, I'll come to your house, that's fine. Like, I didn't know that was an option. And so everybody in the comment was like, well, if you didn't want to go where he suggested, why didn't you just say, come over? Like, it was, but again, her own thing, right? And people do this all the time, right? This is when we talk about facts and feelings not being the same thing, because whatever you made up in your head has to do with your own issues, right? And it affects your conflict with other people. Okay, so those are just a couple of examples of interpersonal and intrapersonal conflict. Again, we're going to focus on interpersonal conflict, so conflict with other people tonight, but just know that a lot of the conflict that you have likely comes down to an intrapersonal conflict. Even if not yours, it might be the other person's intrapersonal conflict, right? Also, when you see people, like, you could tell that they're jealous. I don't really like to say things like that, but when people try to dissuade you from doing something because they're really scared, or they would be scared if they were in your shoes, same thing, right? So two different types of conflict. Let's go over common mistakes people make in conflict and what you should do instead, right? One issue, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 8. Oh, do I not have this? Okay, I don't know if I have this in this slide. I'll just give it to you. So 8 common mistakes that people make in conflict. Number 1, bringing up an issue at the wrong time. You got to be able to read the room. Okay. Just because you might have been at home or you've been thinking about this issue all day, when that person walks through the door may not be the right time, right? They may need time to decompress from work. They may not be in the space to hear what you have to say. Or when you call your friend, she may not be in the space to hear, right? That's why you got to make sure you bring it up at the right time and ask, like, hey, you have the capacity to listen right now? Can we have this conversation right now? Right? Or if you know that you guys are having a good time and you haven't had a good time in a long time, right? Maybe that's not the best time to bring up an issue. So when is the right time? So I think you have to, again, it's going to depend on you and your person. You want to make sure that both of you are in the space to hear, right? There's times where my friends call me, and because we kind of all do something similar, a lot of my friends are therapists, or at least we have mature conversation, right? The first thing we ask is, you had the capacity to listen right now? And sometimes the answer is no. Right? Sometimes the answer is no. And so you just have to wait. Another time, sometimes you have to think about where you're going to have the conversation, right? So if you are bringing up an issue about something that the other person did wrong, right? Maybe you have that conversation at their place, in a place where they are more comfortable and more familiar, versus if they're at your house, they may be less comfortable, right? Another good place to have conversations are in a car, because you're sitting side by side, you're looking forward, you don't have to sit face to face, which is more confrontational, right? But in terms of timing, again, you want to make sure that you are both in a space to listen. You both have the capacity to listen. And then you just have to kind of listen to the room, right? If the person is already having a bad day, probably not a good time to have that conversation. Right? What if waiting makes you anxious? So if you have the type of conflict resolution style where you need to handle things early and your partner may need time to think, right? One thing that you can do is say, hey, babe, I really need to have a conversation. Can you let me know as soon as you're able to talk? Right? And then once you get that verbal confirmation, that might make you feel less anxious, right? At least you got it out there so that you can have that conversation. But it is really going to depend on you and that person. Again, also, if it's not something that is a big deal, right? Everything doesn't have to be a serious sit-down conversation, right? Sometimes you could just say, hey, I didn't like when you did this. And you could leave it at that, right? Everything doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing. And we're going to talk about that more in a second. Another common mistake in conflict, holding it in until you explode. And then you want to let everything out that this person ever did in the last 8 years. Don't do that. For one, when you hold things in and you explode and you vomit, that doesn't give them a chance to address your concerns. Usually when you vomit, you also don't present the solution that you want. And also vomiting is just expressing your frustration. It usually doesn't lead to a productive conversation, which we're going to come back to that in a second. So don't wait until you hold it in. Let me ask you this. If you do hold it in, why do you hold it in? So join us next week. Next week, we're going to talk about parent-child relationships. So, so for those of you that hold things in until you explode, can you tell me why you do that? Fear of what? To avoid upsetting the other person. Okay. That makes sense. Thea, what are you afraid of? I hold it in so I don't seem like I'm always confrontational or combative. Okay. So, Nate, there is a way that you can have conversations without being confrontational and combative, right? Especially if you use the sentence that we always talk about. I felt when you did this, moving forward, can you do X, Y, and Z, right? And if you take the attitude out, right, you shouldn't come off as combative, right? So there's things that you can do. Fear to hear the other person's response. Do you think their response is going to be negative? Like, what response are you afraid of? You expecting to read your mind? You don't want to start a fight. Okay. Okay. A negative response. Okay. So fear of being heard or seen or perceived. Got it. Combative. Okay. So all of these make sense, right? And so I think if we can learn how to communicate our issues in a healthy and a productive way, right? Being combative comes out of the equation, right? If you starting your a lot of the stuff we talked about over the week, right? If you're starting your sentences with I feel like, or I felt like this when you did this, next time can you do this, right? What you're doing is starting your sentences with I makes them less defensive, right? When you start with the you did, you said, you, they get defensive. The gloves come on, the hands are up, right? And remember, we're trying to disarm them. And so if you have these conversations when you are calm, right? This is why I say don't have the conversation when you're upset, yelling, angry, rah, rah. Not the time to have the conversation. So if you are able to communicate your issues and your concern in the most effective way possible, the combativeness goes away, being argumentative goes away, right? You literally are telling them, this is the issue, this is what I want you to do. But we're going to come back to that in a second. Let me get through these. I just used this one. So another common mistake in conflict is using accusatory or emotionally charged language, right? That's the you did this, you always, you never. I'm glad you're reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a really good book, right? So right? This is the generalizing. You always, you never. It's not true. And when you say that, you never do da. Yes, I do. I did it last week. Now there go your issue out the window. As opposed to if you say, I feel overwhelmed because I have to do bath time and homework at night. Can you start helping me do bath time with the kids at night? Right? There's nothing to argue about. And either they're going to say yes or no. Right? So it's all about how you are phrasing your issues. I felt dismissed when I shared X, Y, and Z with you and you just said, get over it. Next time, can you just try to listen to me? Or next time when I'm talking, can you just at least say, Dag, that's crazy? I had to tell somebody that before, right? So it's all about how you communicate these things. Another common issue, focusing only on being heard and not resolving the problem, right? You just want to be right. And so you're going to scream louder to make sure they hear you, or trying to make sure they understand what your position. They don't have to understand. Okay. Repeating the same argument because no real resolution has been discussed. We're going to come back to that, why you keep having the same argument in a second. Expecting your partner to just know what you need. Expecting them to just read your mind. They should already know. Maybe they should, but it's a lot quicker to just say, hey, can you do this? If they're not doing it, then holding a grudge. Another common issue, addressing the wrong issue. We're going to talk about issue spotting today too. And then the last comment, well, it's not the last one, but the last one for tonight. Getting defensive, shutting down, or being childish and petty and, hitting below the belt, which we've talked about before. So you guys just asked me this, when to bring up conflict. Choose the right time, right? Not when they are tired, not when they're busy, not when they are emotionally flooded, right? Make sure they have the space. Make sure that you are ready to be calm and to be solution focused, right? Remember, we've been talking about for weeks. Make sure you know what you want the outcome of this conversation to be. All right? Don't just go in yelling. Don't just go in. I think it's crazy what do you want the result of this conversation to be? Right? And then ask yourself, is this about wanting change or are you just venting? Yeah, reading the room is important. I'm sure we've probably all been around people that don't know how to read the room, and it's just like, you're the only one talking. You don't see everybody else is quiet in here. Reading the room is very important. Okay. Let's talk about why you keep having the same arguments over and over again. Before I get there, do you feel like anybody here feel like they have the same argument over and over again, right? The same issue either in their relationship keeps coming up, or you have the same argument maybe with different people, but nothing, like it doesn't actually get resolved. It keeps coming back. Lord, yes. Mm-hmm. If you're comfortable sharing, can you tell me what the same argument or what the repeated issue is? If you're comfortable with sharing what the issue is, how you want to be treated. Okay. Cheating. Okay. So those 3 reasons why you might have the same arguments over and over again. Progressing. Okay. You didn't feel heard. Misunderstood, even when you explain. Okay. So 3 reasons why you might keep having the same argument, right? And of course there are others, but these are 3 common reasons you keep having the same argument. Number 1, you're not identifying the real issue, right? 2, you're reacting to symptoms, not the root. Those are kind of the same thing. Right? Then the 3rd one is you are expressing your pain, but you don't talk about the solution or how to fix it. And then sometimes it is just the other person just doesn't want to, which you also have to acknowledge, as messed up as it is. right? But if it's a situation where it seems like you both want to, right? Sometimes it comes down to either you're not really identifying the right issue or you're not coming to the right solution. Okay. So let's talk about issue spotting. So issue spotting is actually like a really big thing. Number 2 was you're reacting to the symptom instead of like the root of the problem. So let's talk about issue spotting and how do you actually get to the root. So issue spotting is actually like a really big thing in the legal field. It's one of the first things they teach you as like a first-year law student is how to spot the correct issue. Because if you don't spot the right issue, you're never going to resolve the conflict. So there's a framework that I am going to give you. So the first thing, ask yourself, why does this bother me? Right? And so when you're asking, why does this bother you? You want to make sure that you are identifying the emotion that has been triggered. Is this connected to a past wound or unmet need, right? So why did him canceling bother me, right? Do I feel dismissed? Do I feel not like a priority, right? The second thing is, what story are you telling yourself? Right. So the example I gave you guys earlier about her wanting to spend time with her boyfriend that had been gone for a month. And she told herself that because he didn't want to go to the flower shop, that he didn't want to spend time with her at all, which was not what he said. All right. So what story are you telling yourself? And then the third thing is, what do you actually want? Okay. So why does this bother me? What story am I telling myself? What do I actually want? Right? And to put them in another way, what am I really upset about? What do I need that I'm not getting? Is this about a surface level issue or is this a deeper emotional need? Right? What is this really about? And sometimes it takes you time to ask yourself these questions. You might not know right away. And so this is what I mean when I say sit and process your emotions and not bring up things prematurely. And the reason I had to start doing this because I would go and have a conversation and then I would keep thinking and I would think about more stuff and more stuff. Now I got to go back to the conversation. Like, dang, I got to go back. Can we talk about this one more time? And I felt bad that I had to keep bringing stuff up. So I learned to not talk so quickly. And I would ask questions. I would ask myself the questions first before going to talk to those questions. Is this about the surface issue or is there a deeper emotional need? Right. Somebody asked me a question a couple of weeks ago, and she asked me how does she tell her partner that she's not sexually satisfied? And when I asked her, what she needed or why she wanted to bring this up, and she said because she feels disconnected emotionally. And I said, well, those are two different things, right? Being emotionally disconnected and not satisfied sexually, while maybe connected, but just being satisfied sexually, you could tell him to do this instead of that, but that's not going to make you feel emotionally connected, right? What she really needs to address was the emotional connection, not just the sex. You see? Sex was the surface level stuff. the emotional connection. You have an update? I can't wait to hear it. What's the update? So let's talk about, let's do some practice with identifying the root versus like the surface level. Okay. And we might have used some of these examples before. If I go and tell my person that his female best friend makes me uncomfortable, or I don't like her nickname for you. Right? On the surface, he might think, or somebody might think, this looks like jealousy. But the deeper issue is a lack of boundaries or crossing boundaries. I love that for you. You talked and he understood where you were coming from. You apologized and he forgave you. I love that. I'm so happy when things work out for people. Or let's say, here goes another scenario. I do everything around the house with the kids. You don't help. Surface level, him, whether or not he helps around the house or what he does around the house, that's surface level. The deeper, the root of the issue is feeling overwhelmed or unappreciated or unsupported. Does that make sense in terms of surface level versus the root of the issue? Let me know if that makes sense to y'all. But this is one thing that a lot of people get wrong. Can y'all take a second and think about a conflict? Okay, it makes sense. Cool. Think about a conflict you had and see if you can identify like the surface level versus the root of the issue. I have another example. Let's say, okay, you've been there. Okay, perfect. I'm glad it makes sense to you guys. So you guys, we can keep going then. So let's talk about, this is a good one. And this is what we kind of started talking about on Tuesday, Kashmir. We were talking about this with you specifically. Hey, China. Let's talk about the importance of coming to a resolution. This is one of the most important things that I think people don't do, right? It's called conflict resolution, but people forget the resolution part. Yep, that's a good way to explain it. Okay? So this is what I need you to write down. Wait, before I give you that. Conflict without a resolution is just going to lead to emotional buildup and resentment. Expressing your pain, your hurt, whatever it is, that's not enough. You got to talk about what you need to change. Right? And don't leave the solution up to the other person. I had a consultation with a woman. Her and her fiance had unfortunately separated they were separated at the time. And I was asking her, what the issue was and similar stuff. She felt unheard and, same people have a lot of the same issues. And I asked her, did she ever talk to him about these issues? And she said, yes, we keep having the same conversations. And I said, well, what's his response? She said, he wants to make me feel hurt. And I said, did you tell him how to make you feel hurt? And she said, no. How are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know? He might have an idea, maybe, but everybody is different. And that's a good question. What if you don't know? That's where your self-awareness comes in. What's the last part you heard? Right? You have to know. And if you don't know at that moment, right, then say, like, maybe you don't bring it up until you know. Right? I think that is part of processing your emotions and knowing what you want to get out of the conversation. Me personally, I don't go and talk to somebody until I know what I need to be different. All right? So you have to know what it is you want to be different. So I was saying that I had a consultation, and her and her fiance were having issues, and she felt like they were having the same argument over and over again. And one of the issues was her feeling hurt. And I asked her, did she express her concerns with him? She did. And he said he wants to make her feel hurt. And I asked her, well, did you tell him how to make you feel hurt? And she said no. How was he supposed to know? Right? You have to tell the other person what it is you need, because everybody is different. Right? Wow. I told y'all I had a friend that all he wanted me to say when he shared something with me was, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I don't want to hear that. I don't care about your sorry. I need a sounding board, right? I need to bounce ideas off of somebody. Like, I need to work through it, right? But he wouldn't know that unless I told him. Right? This also goes into, like we've talked about this before, asking the person what they need. What do you need from me right now? You need me to listen? You just need to, right? You have to tell, right? You got to tell them what you need, right? Especially if it's something like, oh, I feel unheard. Why do you feel unheard? Why do you feel dismissed? Is it that they always jump in with the solution? So, babe, I feel unheard when you always jump in trying to solve the problem. That's not really what I need from you. I need you to just listen. I need you to be empathetic. I need you to hear what I have to say. I need you to just say, Dag, that's crazy. I had to tell one of the guys I was dating at one time, like, because he would always jump in. And I'd be like, I don't want you to jump in. Literally, all I want you to say is, Dag, that's crazy. And from that moment forward, he would say, Dag, that's crazy. And I felt hurt. Right? But everybody is different. So you have to take the time to understand why you are experiencing whatever it is that you are experiencing and figure out what you need instead. Okay? All right, and it's very common for people to not know, but this is where the self-awareness comes in. You got it. You have to know. Because if you don't know how, they may have an idea of how they can help, but it may or may not be right. You are the expert of you, as my therapist always says. And so ask yourself, right? This is when the processing come in. What about this made me feel like this? Does this trigger something from my past? What am I not getting that I feel like I need? If I feel insecure in this relationship, what would make me feel more secure? Is it that he doesn't compliment me enough? Is it that whatever it is? I feel overwhelmed because after working all day, I still have to come home and cook dinner and do the dishes and do homework and put the kids to bed. What do I want instead? It would be great if he could come home, or because he gets home early, if he could do dinner, or if he could at least take the meat out the freezer, or you have to tell people exactly what it is you want and need. Don't be afraid to speak up. When they say closed mouths don't get fed, I've learned that you have to be as specific as possible. And you don't have to say it in a bossy way. You don't have to say it it don't have to be any of that. Right? When I was talking to the bartender, I didn't like that. You get off late. I need to know that you made it home safely, right? Hey, can you let me know when you make it home so I can make sure no bad guys got you? Y'all know I'm gonna be dramatic. So I can make sure no bad guys got you. You really like to make me worry. You still like it, you have to tell the people exactly what it is that you want. Okay. So write down this formula. Impact, problem, need, solution. Can somebody type that in the chat? Because I know you're about to ask me to repeat it. Impact, problem, need, solution. Okay. This is how you're going to bring up your issues. Impact. You're going to talk about how whatever behavior, their words made you feel. And you already know you're going to start your sentences with I. I felt dismissed when I brought up my idea to you and you changed the subject. I felt dismissed when I told you how I felt and you told me I was being dramatic. Right? So impact. How did it make you feel? Problem is state what happened. When you told me I'm being dramatic. When you went straight to bed without helping me put the kids to bed. When you have to be specific. You can't, none of this, you always, you never, because it doesn't give people a chance to correct the behavior. If I say, you never listen to me, well, dang, I thought I listened to you at least sometimes. I thought I listened to you yesterday. Right? So you got to be specific. Need. Tell them what you need help with. I need help with around the house. I need help with the kids. I need my emotions to be heard. I need to feel heard. I need to feel like you understand me. I need to feel like a priority. I need to feel like you care. I need to feel loved. What do you need? And then solution. What is the solution? So if you use this formula, it will take away you being combative. It would take away from you being confrontational. I felt dismissed when I was sharing my news about work and you just said, oh, that's good. I really need to feel celebrated. Next time, can you throw me a party? Next time, can you clap for me? Right? I felt unheard when I was sharing X, Y, and Z, and you told me I was being dramatic, or you jumped right in with a solution. I really just want to be heard. Next time, can you just listen to what I have to say? It is all about the communication and delivery. It's about to try to cut off again. I don't know why this does this every week, as if y'all not commenting. Okay, we back. Right? So this is the part of conflict resolution. Right? And I'm going to jump ahead for one moment right here, just because you brought that up, that it's about communication and delivery. This is one of the most important things. One of the rules, I'm going to give you some rules to remember. But this part I think is so important. Because I'm so glad you guys are here and that you are working on, becoming a better person, a better partner. we have to work on being more solution focused, not being committed to our negative emotions, not being committed to being petty, not being committed to, I'm going to be mad, I'm going to hold a grudge. Life is too short, right? If there is a solution, get to it, right? Keep the prolonged anger for the big issues. If it's something quick, like, hey, I don't like that you take so long to text me back, whatever, right? Assuming that y'all are at that spot. Don't hold a grudge. Well, I'm just not going to answer when he calls. Come on. All right. We being mature, moving forward. We're not holding grudges. We're not being committed to being angry. We're not going to ignore the person and try to hurt them because you're upset. Because here's the other thing. Sometimes people don't even know that what they did is a problem. Sometimes your feelings get hurt as not the intended, it's like collateral damage. I remember I had this conversation. I was talking to this guy, and a few days after I met him, the night before we were supposed to go to brunch. I think, was that our first date? We were supposed to go to brunch for our first date the night before I got in a car accident. Not a serious accident, but in a car accident. So I needed to go to urgent care. So he was nice enough. He took me to urgent care first. And then I went to brunch. And then I needed to go lay down. Like, my back was hurting. He was upset that I didn't invite him in. Sir, you lucky I let you know where I live. And that's only because I was in a car accident last night. And then that night I was in a car accident. I actually caught COVID. So I was out for the count. He called me snapping. And this is like Christmas time. Like, I had COVID like during Christmas. So I didn't even come home for Christmas. And he called me like snapping that he was going to, I can't remember where he was from, but he was going like home for Christmas. And he called me snapping because he wasn't going to get a chance to see me before he went home for Christmas. And so, and then there was something else that happened in between there. My wine club had an event, so I had people at my house. Right, so those three things. I didn't invite him in. After we went to brunch, I didn't invite him to my wine club event, and then I got COVID, so I couldn't see him. And he was like so upset. And I had to ask him. I said, "What? Well, I can't invite you to my wine club. You're not in the wine club." And was there any men there? And I asked him, what is it that you would have wanted me to do differently? I didn't catch COVID on purpose. You can't come to my wine club event, and I'm not inviting you in my house. I don't know. So what are we talking about here? All right. So sometimes sometimes your feelings are collateral damage. I can apologize that I don't get to see you. I said, but why are we throwing a temper tantrum here? That's exactly what it was. There was nothing. Everything was outside of my control. I acknowledged, I apologized, but there was nothing I could do. I didn't catch COVID on purpose. None of the things I didn't mean to get in a car accident. So you have to understand that it's not, your feelings being hurt are not always intentional. And so we have to step out of this. Oh, I'm going to be petty. I'm going to hold a grudge. I'm not talking to her. I'm going to be mean on purpose. I know ignoring her hurts her feelings, so I'm going to do it to be mean. Right? Everybody says they want a relationship with good communication. It goes both ways, right? It also has to do about conflict resolution, right? Don't be so caught up in how you feel. What is the solution? What do you need to feel better, and communicate that? Okay, you don't like how little or how infrequent you talk to this person. Say something. Say something. What's the worst that can happen? they don't increase the communication, then you in the same spot. You're in the same position. You're not worse off. But if you mention it, they might be able to do something about it. You want to see the person more, say something. You don't want to seem like you thirsty? Well, I guess that's not your person then. What does it hurt to ask? Right? If y'all are already locked in, you have to communicate. People are not mind readers. Okay? So we got to work on it. Not holding a grudge, not being petty, not this passive aggressive, not he should know, she should, No. We communicating. We're going to admit when we are wrong. We're going to take accountability. We're going to apologize. Because sometimes we did not mean it. I apologize for hurting your feelings. I meant what I did, or I meant what I said. I did not mean for how it impacted you. So for that, I can apologize. I was wrong. It's probably not going to be the last time. It sure ain't the first time. I was wrong. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll do better moving forward. But at this big grown age, because you guys are in my class, you have been learning how to communicate. You've been learning how to process your emotions. You've been learning how to share what you need to say without being confrontational, without having the other person shut down. Like, right? We are learning how to do all of these things. I really need for you guys to actually use it, right? I don't show up here just for fun. I really believe in this stuff, and I really want to help people, right? And I think this is one of the biggest areas that people struggle with, right? They want to stay mad, right? And here, the other thing I need you to remember, there is a difference between holding on to your anger and just letting your emotions pass, right? Because I tell you, your emotions have to run their course. But just because I'm mad at you doesn't mean I can't still make you dinner, right? I still have a right to be upset or how I feel, but that doesn't mean that how I express those emotions have to be in a mean way. Okay? So I need y'all to at least try not to be mean on purpose. Try not to be petty. Try not to hold on, right? We're going to be solution focused. If there is something that can be done to resolve this, the quicker the better, right? So that y'all can get back to a good place. Nobody wants to be in this state of uncertainty. We still in this, we not? Talk, ask question instead of just being mad. If you got a question, ask the question. Absolutely, the change is going to take time. For sure. For sure. All I ask is that you try. That's all I asked. Is that you try. Okay? So tell me y'all going to try to do better, to be solution focused and not hold on to your anger and all of that. Because here's the other thing. Once you come up with a solution, that's also going to make you feel better. Thank you, guys. All right? The solution will make you feel better. Hey, I don't like when I feel ignored, or I feel dismissed when you don't text me back for hours, or when you don't answer when I call. Moving forward, if you can you try and text me, I'll call you back when I'm free, or you got to tell people what you want. We're going to be mature, emotionally mature. Yes, the replay will be up. Thanks for the gifts. Right? So, the formula again. Thank you, guys. The formula again. Impact. Problem. Mean. Solution. Okay, y'all got it? And so, just a recap for you guys. a recap for you guys. Before you talk and go have the conversation, right? You're going to process your emotions. So you're going to ask, what's really bothering me, right? Is it that thing, right? Is it the surface level or is it something deeper? Right? You're going to figure out what outcome you want. Why are you going to go talk to this person? Right? And are you in the space to bring this up in a calm and a clear manner? I want to add one more thing to that. I think before you go and have the conversation, I think you also need to figure out, is this a me, them, or us problem? We talked about that before too. Is this a me thing? I call them my Erinisms when I know it's something that is just me and I don't bring those up. My Erinisms, I just try to work on myself. I go talk to a friend and vent because it's a me thing. If it's a them thing, I don't take it personal. Or is it a us thing where both of us need to do something different? Me, them, or us problem. Okay? So that's before the conversation. Once you have all that figured out, during the conversation, you're going to use I statements. You're going to be specific. You're not going to generalize, right? This is when you are going to use the impact, problem, need, solution. And then after the conversation, let them talk. Give them space, right? Be open to their perspective. They may have a different interpretation, right? Maybe there is a compromise, right? When it's a us problem, right? When both of you need to do something better, you got to compromise, right? That's something that you guys have to work through together. Don't weaponize what they share. You know how many times I hear this from men? I can't share with her because she just throw it back up in my face. It goes both ways, but I hear it a lot. Men share that a lot. All right, we got to be a safe space. We're going to talk about that more in our class for emotional intelligence for men. I'm going to be talking to men, but also how women can be a safe space for men as well. Okay. Let's talk about conflict. I'm going to give you signs that you handle conflict well, and then I'll give you rules to remember. Okay. Signs that you handle conflict well. You feel clearer and not heavier after your conversation. You didn't escalate the situation and you didn't shut down. You asked for what you do want and not what you don't want. Your partner responded with like curiosity, like they didn't get defensive. Right? They don't feel attacked. That means you're handling conflict well. Okay. So I'm going to give you guys rules to remember, and then I got to get out of here because I got a 6 a.m. flight and I have not packed anything. Rules to remember when it comes to this conflict resolution stuff. Y'all ready? Think about the goal, right? It is not about who's right or wrong. You are not trying to win an argument. You're both right. You are both right for how you feel, right? I tell you all the time, your emotions are valid. You have a right to experience these emotions. So I feel this way, you feel that way. What are we going to do about it? It's not, oh, I'm right, you wrong. You got to let go of the right or wrong. We both right. What do we do about this? Okay. It's not a win or lose, right or wrong. It's not a win or lose, right or wrong. Where do we go from here, right? What is the goal? What issues need to be resolved? Okay. Please remember to be solution focused. Don't dwell in the problem. All right, same thing, right? Don't be committed to staying upset, right? We're going to be solution focused. Let those emotions pass. Pick the right time to talk. Focus on what you do want and not what you don't want. So I should have talked about this a little bit more. When you are bringing up conflict, right? The other person getting defensive is a common thing. It's a natural thing. Nobody likes to be told that they are doing something wrong. They did something wrong. They're not right. As much as you can, focus the conversation on the positive or the things that you do want, not what you don't want. So let's go back to the sex example. I think that's a good example or easy example. If you need to tell your partner that you are not satisfied sexually, instead of saying, you don't do it right, I don't feel, this ain't that, this ain't it. All right. Now you just kind of defeated them and beat them down. Instead, what you want to, hey, can we try this? Send videos. What you think about doing this? Right? To figure out what you do want instead of what you don't want. All right. That goes back to the goal. What's the goal? You want to make sure you finish. And so that means you need to have a conversation about what does work. Unless it's something that you want them to stop doing, right? Then you could say, hey, I don't like that. But don't just like, right? Remember, everything that's true doesn't need to be said. All right. So focus on the things that you do want. Okay. And then the last reminder, you can't fix what you don't name clearly. Okay. So that is all I have for you guys tonight. 3 takeaways. You can't change what you're not willing to name. Conflict doesn't have to be a fight. It should be a path to bring you guys closer. All right. You are responsible for naming what's going on and presenting a solution. All right. Don't just dump your emotions. And when I say talk about what you do want and not what you don't want, right? That also goes to like when you are sharing, well, you could have did this or you should have did this. Yeah, but they didn't. So let's talk about what we do next time. Right? Like harping on what they could have, should have, would have did is probably not helpful. You didn't call me when you got home and I asked you to. All right, we know okay. Right? Like you got to think about what it is you are. What's the goal? Like, why are you having this conversation? You just want to argue? Like what, okay. They're like another thing, like when people are, I'll use cheating as an example. And if people want to start asking questions like, well, how many times? That don't matter. That's just going to make you even more upset. It doesn't help get to the solution. Like, what's the goal here? People, like, they want to argue about things that don't really matter. Yeah, but you could have, you should have, he would have, you wrong for that. And right, we're not doing the you. I felt. Right, you want to keep it on how you feel and what you need different. Just arguing about somebody's action. Y'all can go back and forth all day long. And we're just going to keep talking about, well, you did this and you did that and not. Right, you shouldn't want to know. Other things about conflict. Now I'm just things that I always remember. I have to tell people. Don't ask questions you already know the answer to. When you ask questions you already know the answer to, you are giving them an opportunity to explain things away. I'm glad you learned something. So the replay will be up. Give me a few days, and I'll make sure that it is up. All right. Don't ask questions you know the answer to. You're just giving them an opportunity to explain things away. What else? There's no such thing as closure. You just want them to say something differently to make you change your mind. When you keep asking questions and you are welcome. Yeah. And here's the other thing, right? Yes, you are missing. Well, this will be the third one. So there's 2 missing. The last 2 places are not up. They should be up. I actually, my assistant did them. I actually just approved them today. So they should be up very soon. So all 3, the last 2 classes and this one will be 3. Yes, I know you're missing them. I promise they will be up soon. The last thing I will say about this is that relationships are optional. Anybody you allow to be in your life should be a positive addition. Right? Relationships do not have to be that whole thing that we taught, like, oh, everybody go through stuff, everybody got to struggle, everything is toxic. No, it doesn't have to be. It don't have to be hard. I don't know who told you that. It doesn't have to be. Right? And what you don't change. Yes, the YouTube is my same name. If you're on the email list, I send the email once it's posted. It should say like EQ 101 replay email list in my bio. Then you can make sure you'll definitely know when it's posted. But yeah, like relationships are optional, right? And so I understand, giving people an opportunity to learn how to treat you, but after, like, how long are you willing to wait for somebody to treat you the way you need to be treated, or for you to feel heard? All right, and so at that point, people treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And so at some point, you have to make the decision, right? Once you're in that state, when you know this is no longer working for you and you're still there, this is when it becomes an intrapersonal conflict, right? This is a conflict within yourself, and you have to ask yourself, why am I still here? And I know that this is no longer serving me, or I know this is not healthy for me. And I consider a relationship is unhealthy for you if your needs are not being met, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually, like everywhere. All right. And so it's up to you of how, the people you want to keep in your life. But I just hope that, through raising your self-awareness and understanding who you are and what you want and need in relationship, and I don't just mean romantic, I also mean platonic, right? That you will do better jobs of picking who you give access to, right? And we like to get real crazy when it's somebody that we want to date. Keep that same energy you would have with a platonic friend. You wouldn't let your platonic friend talk to you crazy or cross your boundaries. Don't let him or her do it either. Right? It's things, we give too much grace and we make too much excuses for people too soon. You save the excuses and you save the grace for when you know this person deserves it. We want to off the bat start making excuses for people. What? No, that's backwards. Let them prove that they deserve the excuses, the apology, the grace, right? Don't jump into that. Right? Ask yourself, if this was a girlfriend, like a platonic friend, would I accept this behavior? So what if the reason you stay is fear of starting over? Specifically, what do you fear about starting over? Or because you have abandonment issues, right? And so I'm glad if those are the reasons, I'm glad that you can name them. And so if you are going to ever leave, you have to come up with a solution, right? So let's say, I'll use a different example, right? So let's say you are afraid to leave a situation because you cannot financially make it on your own. If that is a concern of yours, right? The solution would be, okay, I know that if I leave this relationship, it's going to be hard for me financially on my own. The solution is to, how do you make sure you have enough money to make it on your own? Right? And so, yes, you need being financially stable is the solution, but now break that down. What do you need to do to become more financially stable? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to get a certification? Or do you just need to apply to more jobs? Do you need to, decrease your spending? Do you need to pay off some debt? Right? And so the reason it's important to have these conversations with yourself is so that if you are ever going to leave, you know what you need to do beforehand. Right? This is why I tell you, I will never tell you guys when to leave a relationship, because you have to learn your lesson. Right? I tell you this all the time. I talk to people. I have talked to women that are in abusive relationships. I don't tell them to leave. I ask them, are you ready to go? Sometimes the answer is no. And so then the conversation that we have is different. So what is this keeping you here? What are you afraid of? And then I actually just had this conversation with somebody when we started this class. And she said she wasn't ready to go. And I said, well, she was afraid. I said, what are you afraid of? And we talked about, well, what support can you put in place to address those fears? And she actually wrote me a few weeks ago that she left and that she's doing well because of the support that she put in place beforehand. Right? So you have to figure out, what is the issue? What is you're feeling abandoned about? What? Right? Abandonment issue, that might be something that you need to go to therapy for. Right? If you are afraid of being alone, right, that is something that you have to address, because if you don't want to be with you, why does somebody else want to be with you? Right? So you have to ask yourself these difficult questions and come up with the solution. What is the alternative to this? Right? Starting over, but next time you're going to be smarter, because you're going to look at this relationship that you just got out of, and you're going to look at the things that you could have done better, right? Because you can't change the other person. All you can do is take accountability for the part that you played in this, right? And so even if the part you played is staying too long, then okay, that means next time I know I'm not going to stay too long. Well, what made me stay too long here? Because the sex was good. It was at least a warm body, so I wasn't by myself. Okay, so I know I have a problem being by myself, so I need to address those. I've tried fixing us, but she's moved on, but we still live. And that's tough, right? Because it takes both of you to fix things, right? I always ask, so like when you apply to work with me one-on-one, right, I always ask in my intake form, is the other person willing? Right? Are both of y'all in? Because if the other person is not willing to work on this, I can help you become a better person, but we can't work through the things between you if the other person doesn't want to. Yeah, and that's a tough position to be in. And I think you get to decide if you're okay with that or not. Right? So a lot of the conflict, again, it starts with you on the inside, and only you have the answers to those questions. You have to ask yourself the difficult questions, right? That's what, when I am working one-on-one with somebody, right, that's what I'm there. I don't give you the answers. I sit here and I ask these questions. It's just I'm able to go a lot deeper, and we can get a lot more personal one-on-one. But, right? It all comes down to conflict, but you always have to make sure you have the solution, and you have to come up with the solution. I can't give it to you. I can ask the questions, I can make suggestions, but ultimately it's your decision about what you do about the conflict. You're scared of what your son would think could be. So that is definitely something to be concerned about. And so if you're afraid of that, then what can you do to make sure that he still knows that you still love him? You're still his dad. You're still in this, right? The conversation probably has to start with the mom. Like, hey, I'm not okay with this situation, but I still want to be in my son's life. Right? I think that's where the conversation should probably start. And you guys come up with a co-parenting plan. You don't necessarily have to go through the courts. You don't, if you and your co-parent can come up with a solution together, you don't need the courts, right? If you guys are able to be mature and work it out, do that, right? Have that conversation. Like, I'm not okay with staying in this house with you, right? One, I can't heal from you if I still have to see you every day. Yeah, like, and so at some point, you gotta put boundaries in place. But you know that even if, like, worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario, if you say, hey, I'm not okay with this arrangement anymore, I'm going to leave, I'm still going to be at my son's life. Even if she says no, worst case scenario, you know that you have a legal right to your son, and you can always go to court and make sure that you have your rights. And all that men don't get a fair shake is not true. I don't know where you're located, but even if you have to hire a lawyer, you always have a legal right to your child. So worst case scenario is you have to go to court. Best case, you guys can be mature and come up with a healthy co-parenting plan, relationship, whatever. But you're concerned about what your son will think if you leave, but what does he think if you stay? He knows that y'all aren't happy. He can see the discord or whatever it is between y'all. So then it's like, what are you teaching him? Right. We're doing parent-child relationship next week, and that's going to be a good one. Parents know that you are your kid's first teacher. You're going to teach them something to do or what not to do, but you're your child's first teacher. And so they're sponges. They suck everything up. But that's next week. Parent-child relationships next week. Any other questions before I get out of here? Because when I tell y'all I have absolutely nothing packed, and my flight is at 6:30 in the morning. You are welcome. Please keep me updated. Yep, keep me updated on that situation. I am going to see you guys next week. You are welcome. Have a good night, everybody. Membership people, I will make sure you get the handout. I actually have quite a few for you guys this week, but you'll have them all. And I will make sure that the replay is up on YouTube. Good night, guys.